The thing I would love for everyone to take away about gender and trans issues is that they are tied into every element of our being. People very often say, you can't make blank into a personality. Yes, you can.
Content warnings for this episode include descriptions of religion, cults, brainwashing, gaslighting, drug use, and mental health. Genderful would like to acknowledge the indigenous peoples and unceded lands that the producers, hosts, and guests live and have dwelt upon. Today, we honor the Coast Salish
and the Tohono O-odham and Pasca Yaqui people.
We honor the elders, the human, plant, and animal ancestors of these lands and celebrate the living descendants of these peoples. May all beings tend these lands for the goodness of the next 7 generations and beyond. Mighty folks, welcome to Genderful, a talk show interviewing gender diverse folks about their special interests.
The name of our show celebrates that gender expansiveness is wonderful.
Hi, I'm GenderMeowster, and my pronouns are they, them.
Hi, I'm Atlas of Phoenix, and my pronouns are also they, them. The focus of our show is to interview trans, non-binary, agender, and gender-diverse people regarding their special interests, passion projects, and resources for the gender-diverse community.
We want our audience to know that this show is hosted by 2 folks who also identify as non-binary, transmasculine, neurodivergent, and disabled, with the passion for telling trans stories.
We invite you to remember that we are whole people with robust lives, friendships, challenges, and successes. We love and are loved, and we are delighted to share these stories with you.
As always, we kindly remind our listeners that no person is a monolith of their identities. Your identities can change over time and are valid every step of the way. And if you think you're gender diverse, you are gender diverse. There are no social or medical prerequisites to be included in the community. Hey, y'all. This week, our guest, DiAn DvIAtioN, he, they, is chatting with us about paganism, animism, and spiritual practices. Huzzah. DiAn, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome to Genderful.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's so fun. Oh my gosh. How did we find you? Like, I know that Juice is the one who scheduled you for the show, but do we just like find you on Instagram or something? Like, how did this magic happen?
I feel like Juice mentioned seeing me on Instagram, being loud about something. I can be really loud, like, take up a lot of space. I wear loud colors. And I feel like I might have done a reel or something that came across the way.
Nice. I love that. That's so great. Before we get into like serious questions, can we both chat our necklaces? We're the necklace twins today.
I'm a little butterfly. Well, speaking of 89, I'm 85, so I have that original DDR soundtrack in my head all the time.
Oh my gosh, yes. DDR, oh my gosh. I love DDR. That was so fun. I played it obsessively in high school.
All the time. I was just at the mall.
I had the dance pad. I had the dance pad with a thick foam in it.
That's nice. That's real nice. That was like PlayStation 2 though, huh?
Ooh, yeah, nice. It was. Chat, we both, DiAn and I, have been playing Tears of the Kingdom all weekend separately at our houses.
Yes.
It's been so fun.
It's so fun. It's just different enough. Like, it does not feel like replaying Breath of the Wild, but it doesn't feel too different where it's like, oh no, I got to relearn the controls. Like, it's a really good balance.
Yeah. There's one thing with the controls that's different on this hand, and it's hecking me up every time, but we'll get there. And then I'll switch back to the other game and be like, I don't know how to do this anymore.
Right. Missing all of those new features, which we will not spoil.
Nope, not spoiling. Not spoiling.
But just letting you know. Like, not spoiling, but just letting you know.
It's real good.
So good.
It's great. So that's, for anyone listening to this later, that's culturally what's happening right now is Tears of the Kingdom just released. Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom released on Friday. It is now Monday, so it's been out for a weekend. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I have 1 or 2 friends that I've been like DMing my thoughts to, like, oh my God, this thing. Oh my God, this thing. Because I don't want to spoil it for everyone, so I'm not putting it on socials, but it's just like, we've like negotiated what amount of spoilage, if anything, is okay. And it's like, this thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been tough
So
because I even want,
cute.
like, I find myself wanting to get on Instagram or something and be like, look at this. Oh, and I'm like, no, not yet. Not yet.
Yeah. Don't spoil it. So exciting. Sudbury says, even as someone who played dozens of hours of Breath of the Wild recently, Tears of the Kingdom feels so fresh and delightful, and it really has been hitting the good buttons for me. Yes. Big agree. Anyways, let's talk about gender or something.
Okay.
We can just talk about video games forever. It's so good. I just love that we've both been doing that this weekend, though. It's so nice. So DiAn, what are some things you can trace back to your youth that indicated you might be gender diverse one day?
So it's really interesting looking back, right? Because of that whole hindsight 2020 thing. But also the community that I grew up in didn't follow, and I'm going to use the word, even though we all know this isn't really a thing, didn't follow gender norms quite the same way. My town is, to put it in perspective, probably 90% Black where I grew up. And within that, we have a strong Gullah Geechee community, which has, cultural ties going way back, isolated out of the systems of white America. And so a lot of the stuff that I didn't necessarily think of anything when I was young, I look back now and I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, that was totally me trying to find ways to not even necessarily escape dysphoria at that age. I don't think that it really set in my youth, but really finding moments of gender euphoria. And like, I remember going out with all of my cousins who were boys, were always, now, regardless of your gender, you were put in the yard when I was a child. That's where children go. We do not go inside, we go outside. And outside, we all took turns gardening, cutting the hedges, whatever. However, something that somehow was like a boy child thing was getting to go jump on the back of a pickup truck and go out to the country and help with, picking all sorts of stuff. And I remember being just absolutely honored when the person would pick me, like put me on the truck and let me go with them. I'm like, oh, me, I get to go. And I didn't think of it, but that was in my head a way of kind of being affirmed in my early feelings of boyhood, or, and I'm non-binary. So it's an interesting, like, crossover between that concept of boyhood and the liminal space that I feel as my gender, right? Like having to use the languages that I have, that's the best that I can put it. But yeah, definitely those were some of my early ones of things I got to do that were designated more so to the boy children, and feeling just extremely, like, kind of proud in a way that at the time I felt was like, am I being weird? Oh, that might just be my life sentence there. Am I being weird?
I mean, I don't think it's weird. If I were to, I don't know if I've ever actually answered this question. I may have, but because there was an episode where Atlas interviewed me. But I think about, there's a time in my childhood where, on the topic of Zelda, since Chad is still excited about Zelda, where I would go over to my friend's house, and he was a guy, and we would play Ocarina of Time. And that was like a big part of my childhood, was like playing Ocarina of Time. And then later, like when I was in high school, it was like playing Final Fantasy 7 or 10 or whatever was out right then. I think 10. I think we were playing Final Fantasy 10. And so I don't know, to me, I feel like getting to play those games was part of my like childhood that was more like dude flavored. I'm non-binary. I'm not like a trans man, but it was more the masculine, like there weren't a lot of girls that were doing that.
No, it's true.
There were some, but there weren't a ton. So those games in particular, especially in the 90s, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I hear you about like, being included in those sort of boy rights.
Yeah.
Being like,
I hadn't thought about the video games and stuff, but another one that, now some of y'all are going to be like, what's that? But I'm going to put it out there, LAN parties. Like literally taking your computer, your early age computer, to a room or to somebody's house, hooking up to play the early like World of Warcraft or something like that together. And yeah, I didn't think about it, but you know what? There weren't many femme people kind of in that scene right at the time. Like of course there were, but especially where I grew up, well, first, even people who had computers, it was kind of like rare, but yeah, that wasn't necessarily a thing. Like, I don't know, I'm weird. It's odd too because I went to art school in high school. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of flow and flux, right? As far as what
Yeah.
gender expectations were. But yeah, I haven't really thought about that. Yeah, the video games and even the end quote boys anime. I really feel like everybody was watching Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon. It was not boy or girl. We all watched it. Like the anime was non-binary.
Chad is very excited about LAN parties. Sunbury says LAN parties. I missed out on those, but definitely seemed fun. I was definitely scared of jerk cis men at those parties too, though.
Totally.
And then Mirror Me said, you could still host a LAN party these days. I did a bunch of years back before COVID. I mean, why
wow.
don't we have like a queer and trans LAN party sometime? Sounds like a good time.
I got a micro tower nowadays, so I'm totally down. I can just throw it in
I'll
a
bring the
backpack.
snacks. I'll bring the snacks. I'll be snack dad.
Yes.
It's like an annual thing in the East Midlands. Your friend still goes to a big LAN party in the UK. Oh my gosh.
Oh wow. That's really cool though.
This is a really niche hobby and I'm into it. I
I had
love that
no
everyone's excited
idea.
about it.
Yeah, I'm glad I brought it up. I had no idea.
Yeah, I remember I was at some of those, but it was a mixed gender LAN party. So there was like Halo Squad A in one room, Halo Squad B in a different room, and then in the middle living room was like DDR.
Mm-hmm.
And so all the girls were supposed to play DDR and the boys were supposed to be playing Halo.
Mm-hmm.
I did play DDR because that was my favorite out of the game options, and I didn't know how to play Halo and also guns, but I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, the mixed gender LAN party.
Yeah. DDR was
Woo.
very mixed gender where I was because dancing is such a cultural thing. DDR was like a rite of passage, like putting it on hard mode and like acing every move. That was like my generation's version of the electric slide in Black culture. Like my mom, it was like, oh, look, we can do the electric slide to anything. My generation was that samurai butterfly song and like killing every move, like just, oh, look, I'm amazing. But
Oh man. Noted Bubbly says those are some funkalicious glasses, DiAn.
thank you. They glow in the dark. I have to let
Oh
everyone
my
know. They do.
gosh, that's so good. That's my favorite.
Mhm.
I love that. I love how stylish you are.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
so like clearly something happened from your childhood where you were doing like, you know, playing and doing the fun things, getting included on the truck to like being the um, mustache and goatee bearded person that you are today. So can you tell us how your relationship to gender has evolved over time?
Oh yeah. So first, even I had a fear once upon a time of, I'm gonna use the word and flow with me here. I had a fear once upon a time of labeling myself. Like there was
Mm-hmm.
this stigma put on, well, you don't have to be a label. You don't have to let so and so be your whole personality. And it was lots of different things in my life, you know, like even the concept of being an artist when I was in high school. Like, yeah, so you're one of the VA kids, you're visual arts. We get it. It doesn't have to be a label. And it's like, but that's how I find my people. Like learning to use the words that describe me best are how I find my people. And so really even learning to understand um the word usage and that the words that describe people who are like me in our expressions was a huge change. And that wasn't even until my maybe mid to late 20s as the internet changed up from the walled gardens of AOL to, you know, what looking more like it is now. You know, I graduated before YouTube, y'all. So like right around when
Whoa.
that came, yeah. Some of the first places I started to explore gender was on a site called LiveJournal. And it was just
Love
people
it.
who would journal their thoughts. It was literally like really reading other people's diaries and, you know, coming across trans people and being like, wait, this sounds familiar. This is kind of how I feel. And then, you know, coming across YouTube videos from uh, trans people and gender expansive people who weren't using the word trans really, but talking about their feelings around gender and seeing little pieces of myself in those discussions and finally getting active in a forum is the word I'm looking for, a forum called Laura's Playground. back in the day. And it was all just, all sorts of the trans umbrella, like just all sorts of folks under gender expansion who would just share what their experiences had been, what their childhood had been, because the message that I received as a young person is to be trans, you had to have this, oh, but I'm a boy stuck in a girl's body type of thing. And that was what it meant to be trans. And that wasn't my experience really. Like, so, I just kind of was like, oh, that's not me. But once I opened up to all these other words, all these other labels, as they were called, I really was able to explore, okay, hey, I have this feeling. So what does that mean for me? What does this look like if I take it somewhere? It took me over 10 years to decide on hormones or not, but I'm glad I took my time. I like to take my time with things and just really think about how that intersects with, other things in my life around mental health and chronic illness and such. And if it was something that I felt I needed to do to fit a label better, or if it was something that I wanted really in my life. And so really taking that time and talking with people in places like this is why I think it's so important to talk about it. Is I can remember coming across videos, interviews, podcasts of people talking about their experience. And that's how I started to discover me, really, is that kind of body mirroring, body doubling thing that I do in my very neurodivergent life. It was really helpful to hear other people talk about it.
I love that. A big part of why I keep making this show is because I think it's important to keep telling our stories so people can see the other paths, the other options. And the reason the background on my scenes is the non-binary flag instead of the trans flag is there's a ton of trans podcasts. And non-binary is trans, depending on who you ask.
Yep.
For me, trans is an umbrella term and non-binary is one of the subsects or flavors of trans. Trans meaning everything that isn't cis. And, it's about creating more of that visibility, more of that like possibility dreams.
Yeah.
Like for our audience members. And I can tell you, it was really powerful. I think I waited at least 5 years to start testosterone, maybe 6 or 7. Like I came out as non-binary and I was like, okay, that's it. Social transition done.
Right.
They, them, that's it. The end. But yeah, it took a lot. I had to get more secure in my personal life. Like got married, bought a house, like, my person who loved me was kind of figured out. I mean, there's plenty of people who love me, but I don't know, like my life partner, my ride or die, like the person who, no matter how much I changed, was going to care about me. In addition to me being that person, right? Shout out to Trans Capybara. That's my wife. Yay. We're going to have her on episode 100 and then promptly stop counting episode numbers. Yeah, we do love Cappy. She's great. Yeah, so I started tea late, just like you did. It took me time to get there. And there was so much fear for me, like to take it. I was like, well, I'm a singer. What about singing? Like, I want a beard, but I don't know about all that other body hair. Like, yeah, for you, like when you made the decision, were there fears that you had to sort of overcome or quiet or hold or tend on the journey?
Yeah, for sure. Even opening up about being non-binary, which I did before I don't even know if I knew hormones and like HRT was an option, when I kind of was like, okay, hey, you know what? This non-binary thing makes sense to me and for me. But when I started to think about the concept of transition, so first of all, I don't like moving. I don't like changing space. It can be a really big challenge. And so the concept of doing that within my body, like this body that I had known at that time, 27 years or so. And I was really afraid, like, I don't know what changing means. I had people in my life who had transitioned. One of my partners, Gaius, had transitioned with HRT and everything. I had other people in my life who were actually, and this was the other thing, so many people in my life were trans. Like as I made friends, went to college, met new people, and it was like, wait, that kind of like attracts like type of thing. So it was like, okay, maybe I should give it a shot. But yeah, definitely that changing in my body. I had some struggles in my high school years around my body that weren't, well, looking back, they probably were related to gender, but at the time I didn't quite realize that. And so having big changes in my body felt really frightening, as well as I sing. I used to sing professionally, and mostly now I sing for fun, but I love singing. And I was really worried about exactly that, like the concept of my voice changing. What does it mean? What would I sound like? Like, actually, even to this day, I'm going to watch this recording and be like, who's talking? Is that me? But I don't know. Realizing one thing that really helped me with a lot of that fear, which is something we're going to talk about today, is reassessing my relationship with spirit. Like, what does it even mean to be a person? Which, y'all, that sounds like such a jump from like HRT to questioning your own humanity, but it was such a part of it for me. It's like, okay, but what even am I? Am I this body? And so, but bodies change. Change is the natural order. This being static is actually doesn't fall in line with most of nature. Everything in nature is constantly changing, growing, being aging. And so really coming to an understanding of that helped quell a lot of my fear, because it's going to change anyway. I can either put some influence in that change, or I can let it change without my influence. But either way, my body was going to change. So it really helped me to kind of reassess and think about it, because I was totally, I don't know if it's like just a fear of the unknown or that lack of clarity of exactly what I wanted, because I did not. And even now, sometimes it's hard to find non-binary folks who present in ways that I feel really, really aligned with. It's I think for all of us, I mean, for all trans folks, right? It's a personal journey, but especially when there isn't, like, I can't look and go, oh, look, that person, that's the one I want to model after or be like, I don't know, that's been different for me, because so much of my youth was finding a person or a thing and saying, oh, hey, that's what I want to be, that one right there, and trying to move around to fit that, versus coming from internally, like, hey, why don't I see where I go? And so that's been a big shift out of that kind of fear of the unknown to embracing it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That actually helps us to switch topics to the next question, which is, how has your experience of gender informed your spiritual practice?
Yeah. So I grew up in a Pentecostal megachurch that leaned toward a cult of personality. There was a person at center who, it was more about him than it was about the congregation's version of God. And because of that, I questioned a lot of what I learned spiritually really, really young. I was an early reader. I love reading. And I came across this book that I wish I remember the name of, y'all. It was a compilation of not all of it, but a huge compilation of folklore from all around the world.
Cool.
Spiritual tales, like all sorts of stuff, just from everywhere. And as I read it, I kept seeing the same stories over and over and over. And they would tell you, what time period this was from, and what area of the globe it was from. And it's like, okay, so these stories have been here long before Christianity existed, and it's the same stories. That makes sense, right? Very little in the world is new. But there were the stories without the exchange that we were expected to make in my church. My church was very much about money and giving a certain amount, or giving a certain amount of labor if you didn't have the money, because you always owe God. And you always just had to be thankful that you were even alive. Like, and it was, looking at things, even as a 7-year-old, like, no, I don't have to be thankful. Like, I don't. What if I just exist instead? Like the people did in these stories. They were fine. They just existed. Trees just exist. They don't wake up like, oh, I'm so thankful. Thank you, world, for letting me be here. Like, it was this groveling, this constant groveling that they wanted. And that also informed a lot about how we were supposed to behave. That most of the gendering that was placed on me was placed on me by the church, not actually my family. My family was pretty flow. Like, we wore school uniforms, and I remember saying to my mom one day, like, I do not want to wear the jumper skirt thing anymore. I was so athletic, running around in a salopette that kept flipping upside down was not going to work. And yeah, my mom just real quickly was like, oh, cool, we'll get you shorts. Like, it wasn't, like, what, the boys' uniform? It wasn't anything like that. It was just, yo, you're right. You run around too much. Here, wear this. And that part was fine. However, when it came to church, like, no, you need to have on the dress. You got to look this way. You need the puffy petticoat. I'm originally from Georgia, y'all. Yes, in the late 80s and early 90s, we were still wearing petticoats and lace. They're called dickies. They're like these lace bibs that you put on over your dress to make it even lacier. Like,
yeah,
it was
wow.
intense. Yeah, it was. And bonnets, sun bonnets by them.
Yes.
So,
no straw hats for you, only
no
sun bonnets.
Full bonnets with flowers shoved in and everything. So,
flowers.
I loved it, actually. The flowers. Listen, I actually loved it in some ways because I liked it was like, I don't know, I feel like it was my own baby version of drag. It was like, oh, look at me, I'm so over the top, But so I actually didn't mind that very much. But then the behavioral parts were church. And I'm gonna touch it and then let it go. The racist history of how Christianity and whiteness established America's gender roles is thick. There is a lot of history there, but that's thick where it was.
C's.
Yeah. Juicy, 2C juicy. And so the church really felt like, okay, if you're behaving in this way, that's how far away from God you are. You're very beastly. You should know how to behave, as a woman should behave. And I was very loud as a child as well. I questioned everything in children's church out loud. I spent so much time in time out, like just becoming more and more evil. And getting to that place where I was seeing, all these different words, all these different ways of expressing gender, I had already kind of let go of that Christian megachurch stuff. But one of the first thing I leaned into, which I think everyone in 1997 leaned into, were the growing pagan covens that were all around. You could go to those, like, I don't even know what you call them. They would be these little pop-up shops that sold crystals and reliquaries and books by Llewellyn Publishing. And I don't know.
Like occult bookshops.
Yeah. And
metaphysical shops.
Metaphysical shops. Yeah. And they were popping up all over the place. And, I leaned into that really hard, but then found myself in a coven that was even more gendered than my church.
Like a Brit trad situation?
Oh, I think it was something like that. And it was like, we enter the circle, male, female, male, female. But now what's really amazing about it is they felt that flavor
of paganism.
Right.
Personally.
I learned too as well. Like, at the time I was like, okay, wait, hey, maybe this is different, because they did in some ways call it. I remember the high priestess once, as I entered circle, without really looking at who I was like, oh, I'm sorry, a woman should come in front of you. And I was like, I look, I was like, oh, it's me. And, she looked at me for a while and was like, I'm sorry. But it was like, she felt something in my energy that was like, something's going on there. And as I created a push within the coven, that it doesn't have to be that way. What about spirit needs to be gender? If you feel something in my energy, what if we just went by energy instead of body parts or something?
Yeah.
Even if it was that. And a couple people in the coven actually were like, oh, hell yeah. And I was amazed, because it's like, you say something like that, and then you get that like 86-year-old who's like, I definitely have femme energy. And it's like, okay, come on, let's get it. Like, people started speaking up, actually.
That's so great.
Yeah. And it was like, I don't want to call the fire sign. I want to call water. I know I'm not supposed to, but it was amazing to see how, that flux within even. Yeah. Yeah. But they did not like that. The priest and the priestess. And so that did not last. But it was important.
Miriam is saying in the chat, what I love most about paganism is that it feels like the choose your own adventure of religions. So anything that would put a mirror in a box sounds like a terrible time.
I love that. Oh, I love that. It is. It is like a DIY choose your own adventure. I really love that. And that's what happened is after that, it was like, okay, I want something that honors the earth and the way I see things in nature. Because for me, trans is part of the natural flow. There are
Yeah,
very,
totally.
very few things that you look at in nature that are just extremely binary with no flow. Even the concepts, we call things day and night, but the truth is it's a continual spectrum. It's never just day or just night. Everything is always moving. Like, so to me, trans is just the sensible state of things, you know, that flux and the way we change in time. And it really, this is another one, y'all, that some things I was very young when I started making up my own concepts of belief. And one of the first things that touched me so deeply in a spiritual sense was Charlotte's Web, the old cartoon movie.
Yeah.
And she sings this song. He turns the season around, and so she changes her gown. It's this long, actually, no, it's one of the shortest songs in it, I'm pretty sure. And it's the spider singing about the flow of time and how we just are here getting to watch it, just kind of getting to participate in our own little part and then just be gone. And even though that was the saddest thing I'd ever heard in my life at the time, it was also beautiful as far as, wait, that's right. Everything is constantly changing around me. And it really made me want to pay attention to nature, pay attention to the cycles of nature and how that felt in my body, both as not just a trans person, but somebody who experiences a lot of mental challenge with my mood settings, just because of like psychological stuff, and really just look at myself as a part of nature and find ways to honor nature, mark those time cycles, mark time. And what do you know? Suddenly I'm a pagan.
I love that.
I flux between the words pagan and animist. Pagan because I came across it first as a word meaning non-Christian. Animist that I came to much later as a anthropological term that actually kind of started in a really problematic way, but then just kind of went away as David Attenborough, and then people were like, oh, wait, oops, we can't just be assigning people's spiritual beliefs as animist. But I really actually like that word as far as earth honoring. There is a earth honoring tradition. My people in Georgia do honor earth changes, the Gitche people, and changes in weather and cycles of time, even though that history, like I can't look like some people and go, you know, my life history, my family history only goes maybe 2 generations back, 3 generations, because of that's where slavery hits. So yeah, not all of us can look back and say, oh yeah, here's the lineage that I come from for hundreds of years. So animus fits because it is something I've had to kind of make up using pieces of what I do have. And it all came from exploring gender as nature, exploring my own experience of gender as nature.
Have you ever heard of the mushrooms that have like thousands of genders?
It's amazing.
Yeah. Mirror Me, who's in the chat, could totally info dump about that at us at any time. I can't, what is it, like 1400? I don't know. What's the number? Do you remember, Mir? I can't remember. It's a very large amount, whatever it is. I love that there's this theme of change and learning to accept change within all these pieces of your story that you're telling today. So I wonder if, for those who don't know what animism is, if you have a definition that's sort of potent and pithy.
I think I have a potent and maybe not so pithy definition. Animism, I'm going to give 2 parts. There's an old definition that comes out of anthropology, which is, again, it's problematic, y'all. Comes out of anthropology. Animism was the worshiping of non-spirits, so things on earth like trees and water, which is so messed up. And then in its newer form, the way a lot of folks are using it, people coming out of pagan circles or just, you know, following earth honoring traditions that may not have names anymore is how it's being used. Is animism is the worship or acknowledgement and convening and convening with natural spirits in our nature. Like, so again, the exact same things: the water, the trees, the earth that we're on, the air that's around us. So everything around us contains the word that I'm using loosely here, spirit. And spirit can mean a lot of things, whether that's energetic, essence, vibration. But again, it's definitely choose your own adventure. The words you like to use and the way you take that in can definitely vary very much from person to person. So like, I definitely believe in vibration, but I experience vibration in this human body, sometimes as color, sometimes as heat or radiation, sometimes as pressure against my skin, against my body systems. But it's all of that is coming from the world around me. And so that's actually part of my practice, even is to just sit within all the vibrations, which may sound really easy, but especially as a neurodivergent person, that takes in a lot. That can be a really intense exchange with nature, is just honoring all the vibration around. But yeah, so you can think of animism as an earth honoring spiritual tradition that may come from something that was once named. That, so like for me, there isn't a name within the Gullah Geechee hoodoo anymore. Like, so we still call ourselves hoodoo, some people, but where it all came from, though there are lots of histories, like we can trace that history back, but where my particular like family's practice comes from, that's more or less kind of, the name is lost to history. So we'll put the name animism on it, and I'll be a Gullah Geechee hoodoo, but otherwise making my own thing up using the hoodoo that I learned.
I love the varied and assorted definitions that you gave of animism. That's like, you know, I think what Mira wrote in chat is another way to say it kind of simply: everything has a spirit. I think of, so I've been to a couple of witch camps, which is fun. And I think of the differences between like the theists who want to work with gods, like capital G gods, and goddesses, like with names, right? Athena, Oya,
Yes.
Ganesha, whomever. And then those who would show up to witch camp who are more animist, who are like, I want to work with the mycelium.
Yeah.
I want to work with cedar. I want to work with like polar bear or the crows.
Yes.
And so this, one of the interesting things at witch camp is like finding this blend or this togetherness between those who are deists and want to work with, you know, capital G gods and goddesses, and then those who are animists and want to work with elements within nature. And how do we, as a witch camp community that's very eclectic and honoring both paths, find ways to be together? So then we're in ritual and we end up calling in both, you know, Athena and mycelium or whatever. Like, it's like, yep, they're all invited.
Yep.
They all
Come
get
what
to be
may.
at the ritual. Yep,
Hail
exactly.
and welcome, all of you.
Yeah, exactly. Athena celium, nice.
Though there is that crossover when you look at deity like Arachne, spider, but person, but spirit, experiences all of those. So there is that interesting crossover space there. It's interesting.
Yeah. I wonder about I don't know if it's, I think Sekhmet more than Bast maybe is another one of those sort of centaur combined human animal combo.
Very chimeric.
Deities. Yeah. I'm having so much fun. I've lost what question I'm on. I don't even know. All right. And I'm noticing that maybe I'll ask one more question and then we'll have our break and we'll come back to the rest of it.
All right.
I feel like I kind of asked, well, maybe I didn't ask that. How does your spiritual practice create opportunities for fulfillment and euphoria?
Yes. That's an important one. So for me, the way that I'm constructing, so I'm also in coursework right now to become a official minister, like become officiated. And part of why I did that actually is because one thing I realized that I did kind of, when I look back, I wish I had, were more of those rites of passage, not necessarily to align with my cis, like people who are cis in my same practices, but as a trans person, I would love to see, something. Imagine like a sweet 16 party for when you decide to start HRT, if you decide that, or when you just
Yay.
start like a way to mark the beginning of your social transition, if you would like something like that. Or I want to be able to actually, well, of course I can do this without any type of official paperwork, right? But I even look at so many of um my queer and trans fam who want other services around marriage, or things like, we call them wickenings, but like saying, hey, look, here's a new baby in our community. Like, how do we
Mm-hmm.
let that baby meet the world? And so being able to hold official ceremonies and sign licenses and do things like that has become more important to me as I get older and
Yeah.
realize, like, imagine like being able to go to somebody queer for a name change, another trans person, and
Yes.
have a whole ceremony around it
I
instead of it
love
just
that.
being, yeah. And so by becoming real, like by becoming official clergy, I actually give myself the ability to give a lot more to the community and myself in that way, because the practices that I've pulled in around, one big one for me is the body check. Um, my form of communing with nature right now requires me to really let myself pull myself really into my body and check in and
Mm.
just say, hey, what does this feel like? What does this feel like? What does this feel like? Because actually, before being very open with myself about being trans and starting HRT for me was really good. Though I totally know that varies from person to person, like whether they want that or even how it happens when they do it. The important part for me was getting in my body. And
Mm-hmm.
that helps me have less episodes of extreme dysphoria by just kind of checking in with my body more often. It also helps me to know where I am. There was a time when I lived my life very, very outside of myself and would find myself extremely upset suddenly, or extremely dehydrated is another one.
Mm-hmm.
And because I wasn't checking in with my body, but making what might seem like an everyday thing, even something like my going to bed ritual, like it might seem very everyday, but the ritual of it, remember, everything was just every day at one point. Somebody ritualized it. And it's been really
Right.
nice to just have those check ins instead of brushing my teeth because I have to, because I got to go to bed. It's like, no, listen, I'm taking care of myself. This is a caring act. This is also me interacting with nature in this way. I'm cleansing by water. I'm cleansing by friction. I'm creating vibration, and it's really helped me to honor my body in ways that I don't think I could before, even though
Mm-hmm.
there are things I totally want to change in my body. I also don't want it to come across like, wow, my spirituality fully made my trans experience 100% what I wanted. It's not that, but it's letting me stay checked in as I try to find ways to, like, for me, I want surgery in the future. I'm still actually really wishy-washy about what I want to do continuing HRT. Like, I think I might want to lower a bit. Like, it's been a couple years now, but I'm not making those decisions in haste or making those decisions out of desperation anymore. I'm
Right.
making the decisions because I'm checked in, I know what I'm feeling, and I have like a good idea of what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all been because of forming my spirituality this way.
I love that. I love that so much. Um, I don't know if you know this about me, but I actually went to seminary
I did not.
and got a master's in theological studies. I was going to get an MDiv, but I converted to paganism in the middle of Christian seminary. And I was like, I don't want to pay another 20 or more $1,000 to get a degree I probably am not going to use, because it's very hard to get full-time paid work as a pagan clergy.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
you can, if you try real hard, you can maybe do it as Christian clergy, but especially in America, pagan clergy don't make any money. So I was like,
Yeah.
why am I going through all this trouble and going through all this money? I was really lucky that I was able to switch degree topics and graduate with something. So I have a master's degree instead of nothing, instead of debt with no degree. I'm ordained through the Universal Life Church, which is the the place you just get ordained on the internet. It takes a few days. And I have done a few weddings and funerals. But I love what you're talking about with rites of passage for like trans milestones, right?
Yeah.
Like, when you're talking about brushing your teeth and thinking about how you're engaging with cleansing via water and vibration, like it's like you're engaging in gata practices, except through a pagan lens instead of a Buddhist lens, which I love so much. Anyways, I would say that comparative religion was my focused special interest for a majority of my 20s. It is still something that's interesting to me, but my special interest has moved more towards gender at this point in my life. But it still makes my heart sparkle when I hear people talking about like intersectional religion paradigms.
Yeah, that's amazing. No, I did not know that. That's absolutely amazing. And there was something you just said, it really like sparked in me. And you know how you like hear it and you're like, and then the whole idea just shoots out of the top of your head over there. It'll come back like, 4:00 tomorrow randomly.
Yeah, ADHD be like that.
Like, bye-bye.
See you later.
But yeah, no, I feel like it was about even that though, funerals, rites of passage and rites of passing, the amount of folks who still can't be buried with their name, with their and so being able to even provide that, to be able to say, hey, I can officially provide end of life services for trans folks so that you can have that last honor, yeah.
Oh man, we have had one other person on the show who was a wedding facilitator, like a trans wedding facilitator. But I haven't met anyone besides me who's been available for the funeral stuff. It's just like, and the funerals that I have done were actually Christian, because my friends were queer, but their parents were not. And so, they wanted to honor their parents' wishes in the funeral. So it's like, all right, let me dig out my dusty old Bible from this shelf over here and find the funeral
ye old
stuff.
holy book.
Ye old book, yeah. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've done that very specific type of ritual work, but it's good. It's good. It's a really important offering. And I feel like, I don't know how much you've thought about this. This phrase is very Christian, but like pastoral care, like basically like the one-on-one sort of, for those in the chat who don't know, the one-on-one spiritual conversations or mentoring or, sort of space holding. That was the part about seminary that was most exciting to me. I wanted to be a chaplain. I wanted to do pastoral care like all the time because it's interesting to me, and having those like close conversations. And, I feel like in my own way, I've created a version of that with my Discord server. Like, we have a bunch of queer and trans people around and we talk about our feelings and we're like brave and honest. And, it's not, we do have guidelines about like, this isn't like a just vent space where you just dump your problems and leave. Like, we're not just here for people's explosions. Like, we're here for like genuine connection and like conversation and like what have you. But yeah, it's been so rewarding getting to bring those skills from seminary and translate it into this queer and trans space. Yeah. And that server is open to folks. You can find the invite on my link tree. I'm dropping it in the chat for those who are here with us live right now. But it's a wonderful space. So we're about to take our break. Is there anything you want to say just on this topic that we're currently on about fulfillment and euphoria and rites of passage before we pivot to our break?
I feel like that last bit you said really hit it, because yes, my academic background originally was in psychology, and I was going to be a therapist. And what do you know? Here's this pastoral care and pastoral counseling role where I don't have to spend another $10,000 and can still provide that type of space holding, because we need it in community so much. Like, I love the joke of like, there's all these jokes around how do queer folks become best friends, and it's like they make eye contact and tell their entire life story, and it's like, it's funny, but it's also like, that's because we need space to do so. We need people because we can't always go into many places and just go, hey, yeah, here's my stuff, and still be honored as trans. Like, I say I love my fluffy dresses, and I still get side eye from some people like, well, you need to choose. It's like, I did. I chose fluffy dresses and a beard. I chose. So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, just this has been great so far. I'm excited for the rest.
You chose gender heckery as your gender presentation for the day. Very good.
Yes, I love it.
Psst. Hey, listener. Over here. Yeah, hi. You like podcasts, right? Sure. Or you wouldn't be listening. Let me tell you about a great new show telling stories written by people who are LGBTQIA2S+. It's called Strange Stories from Odd Folks. That's with an X. And season 1 is coming. Voices by Lee, Lexi Jones, and Tracy Clifton. It's got horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and more. Do yourself a favor. Go check it out. Season 1 begins on May 10th. Go to oddfolks.podbean.com, oddfolks with an X, or search Strange Stories from Odd Folks, say it with me, with an X, wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back, Meowdy friends. So we have a question from the chat. Dr. Trifonius is asking, can you be a humanocentric animist? I haven't had too much contact with animism, sorry.
So I would love just like a short explanation of the word humanocentric. I know a couple different definitions for it, so I'm not completely sure of the intended meaning. The second, but I can at least say, as far as like a general concept, animism is extremely flexible. As far as if you believe that there's a spirit in everything, and you are doing the work to both learn about the earth honoring traditions in the land that you're on, and what the people of that land have done in their earth honoring traditions to make sure that you're not, you know, falling into that line of appropriation versus finding ways to honor earth in your own ways, then I think in general, yes, there are lots of ways to be animist. It's very, not necessarily do as you please, because of course there's that concept earth honoring, right? So, but anything within that scope, I believe so.
I appreciate you taking the time to answer that. And Dr. Trifonius, if you want to be more specific about your meaning, let's see, you did write something in the chat a few minutes ago. As far as Dr. Trifonius is concerned, such a non-theist perspective that focuses purely on human love is not strictly in conflict with the Catholic tradition in which Dr. Trifonius was raised. Yeah, I mean, I feel like something about human centrism is the piece where humans are greater than everything else, or like the center or whatever. And I don't know if, I think for me personally, I don't feel like humans are the end all be all creature on the planet. Like, we're a creature, but that doesn't mean that we have, I don't know.
Oh, I might have found
a fine line before you're into the hubris territory, says Megs. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, DiAn.
Yeah, I might have found, I scrolled back in the comments here because I didn't realize how long ago that is. Dr. Trifonius put, admittedly, I've come to this from a Christian background, but I basically cut down divinity to the human ability to help each other and change the world for the better. There's no overarching God, but the human ability to selfless love is divine in its own right. I see that. Okay, I think with that understanding, there's actually a name for that too. I'm trying to remember. There are so many, well, GenderMeowster, you did comparative religion. So the amount of words to describe the ways that people interact with spirit are almost endless. And I know there is a particular word for our ability to do supposed selfless amicability. Has a name, like that particular thing. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Endless ways to call it. Yeah. I definitely feel like even so, we see that same amity for no reason in so many creatures of Earth. So many of creatures of Earth do kind acts in ways that don't benefit them in any way whatsoever. So that concept of love as something divine, yes, that's beautiful. And I do think that's a type of animism. It has a name. I don't remember what it is, but yeah, that's definitely honoring a spirit that's here in Earth and with so many Earth creatures. So
Yeah. Dr. Trifonius is saying I'd call it agapism. Not sure if that's official. Like agapeism or agapist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's a Greek term for unconditional love, I think. I think it's Greek. Yeah, I think so. Oh man. I love how philosophical this conversation is getting. It's fun. It's also making me feel like I didn't have ADHD meds when I was an undergrad. I really wish I did. I think I would remember a lot more of it now if I had.
That's rough.
It was, I also didn't drink coffee until after undergrad and grad school, actually. So the sort of ADHD brain helper of caffeine was not in my toolkit back there. So speaking of the sort of near endless ways to interact with the divine, what does paganism mean to you? So not what does it mean in general, but what does it mean like in your life, in your practice?
For me specifically, I still use the term paganism, and sometimes I even say pagan animist, because I love the concept of the irreverence of paganism. The hedonism in it, that you are supposed to enjoy life. I love that. And that's why I still use the word pagan, actually, is so pagan, hopefully yes, look, there we go. Do it, rainbow mask.
We're doing a mischief.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So yeah, we're totally that concept of this is the thing that I'm doing is not Christian and it is deeply rooted in hedonism. So that is paganism for me.
I love that. Yeah. There's so many ways to be pagan. I have this like ecofeminist anarchist tradition that I'm a part of.
Oh wow.
And it's very gender, like it intentionally in the principles of unity, it calls out like that we are supportive of all the genders, the gender histories, sexes, sexualities. We also talk about, how important it is that people's different like race and racial experiences be considered and included. Like, it's not only white pagans who are allowed to be there, and not even just allowed, but who are valued and whose experiences and ways of engaging with the divine are valued.
That part.
Yeah. Because like, I don't know, I feel like if you think of someone who is like a white pagan TM, you're like, okay, so they're probably working with Greco-Roman deities and like they might have some locked in gender things, priest, priestess, the end sort of thing. Like, but there's so many other ways to be engaging in folk religion. Like a pagan is someone who's not engaging in the religions of the book. It's someone who's engaging in earth-centered spiritualities, which, there's a ton of folk religion across the world. I mean, Shintoism is even a form of folk religion, if you think about it, like, and that's a Japanese tradition. And, all of the Yoruba stuff coming out of the African continent, like there's a lot of different things there. Yeah, the principles of unity did get updated in the last couple of years. It's true. Maybe we'll put those in the show notes for people to go look at. The principles of unity are part of this branch of paganism called reclaiming, which is the flavor that I engage with sometimes. But also, there's plenty of room for soul practitioners, right? Like just doing your own thing. And, I've definitely seen people mix different pieces. Like I wonder for you, do you do a combination of your hoodoo pieces and other stuff too?
Totally.
Yeah.
That was the first thing. Because hoodoo hoodoo is more like the spiritual essence and folk medicine of what then are multiple different closed systems, like everyone has heard of Udon or voodoo, like has hoodoo as its like formation, the folk medicine of it, but then the religious parts. And when I say religious, I mean the regimented, here's the book and the rules that we follow. Like that's what I'm using in the word religion. That part is a closed system and requires you to do specific things to become part of that closed system. And so for me, I didn't want to be part of a systemic religion anymore of any specific type. So yeah, it required some, but I loved, for instance, the Wheel of the Year that the coven I was a part of was doing. Now, it didn't feel quite right because I don't live in Northern Europe. So at the time when they're saying summer's ending, I'm like, no, summer's in full blast right now. It's 115 outside. So I've changed up things to both include my people's hoodoo and folk history with that wheel, for instance. And so that's kind of like my mix in my own practice is, yeah, I stop on days of, it's not always like to the measure, like cross quarters and such, but definitely the solstices, the equinox, I pay attention. But then I also do a lot of work for days that are commonly celebrated in hoodoo practices, as well as fold in those types of traditions like pouring libations and anointing the threshold door, all sorts of things like that, that you don't really see in lots of pagan circles. That I love that you said, you pointed out the whiteness in some of it, because it's ridiculous sometimes.
Yeah, it can be very white.
Yeah. I actually found myself actually angry one time in circle because we were doing a circle and they called out to the pale goddess. They said something like the pale goddess Isis, this. And the reason I got upset is that the Egyptians left us pictures. They literally left hundreds of pictures.
Oh, yeah.
And not in one picture is Isis presented as pale. Not in one.
Yeah.
And
also,
I understand
Jesus was brown, side note.
They even described Jesus like hair like wool.
Jesus was a brown man.
Calm now. So I don't know. I found myself really upset that time.
I need to tell you that the painting of white Jesus that like all the conservatives have in their house, that is actually Da Vinci's boyfriend.
I love it. Gay. I love it. Yeah. They just needed everyone to know that. Yes. Educating the masses.
Yeah, it is, Casey. It is.
Oh my, and the chat goes wild.
We read it on a meme stream one of these months, and it was so good. I'm crying now. That's so funny.
I love it. Free Range Meg said accidental allies. That might be my new. I make stickers, y'all, and I might have to make a sticker of that, accidental allies, with just the Jesus.
Yeah.
I won't explain it. I'll never explain it.
Absolute shenanigan. It's so good. Well, since you mentioned your stickers, shall we take a brief pause from our next 4 religion questions, and you can tell us about your stickers? Because you have like a whole website, you do art. Like
I do.
I just discovered this when I went and looked at your website. I was like, wait, this isn't even one of the topics we're doing today. What's happening?
I have a bounty of special interest because, okay, so while I love my ADHD kin, we're like siblings in neurodivergence. I'm autistic and bipolar. And so half of the year, I'm going 1,000 topics per hour. And the other half of the year, I am horizontal. So during this time of year, when it's sunny and I love the world, I paint, I draw. That's my official job is a graphic designer. And I make all sorts of stickers and stuff. I kind of realize now I didn't bring anything to show. So this is one on my water bottle here. Oops, got your gender.
Nice. I love that.
And I do all the art for them. And I also make just more, traditional painting type arts.
Yeah, it looks like there's also some furry art on your website.
There is. I am very.
It's not a criticism. I'm excited about it.
Yes, I am very proud. And in fact, I didn't bring that up. I don't know how I left that out. the whole furry community and the concept of kind of create my own body, my own image actually really helped me understand my gender a lot.
I love
And
that.
yeah. So it's still near and dear to me. I don't do as much in the community here anymore because the community is much, much younger than I am. And even though we get along in some ways, I also believe in giving people their space, like to grow and learn and do what they want. So there are not a lot of gray furs out here, and 38 as a furry makes me up there. So
The gray
oh,
fur.
right. But yes, so I love drawing people, places, spirits, the psychedelic visions of the future. I don't know. I just love drawing um the world that our brains and our vibes and our souls live in. I love the surrealism. And for me, even the fur art is under surrealism. Like, what is it in our reality that we're not seeing? And I think the reason the word is surreal and not subreal is because it's just as real. I remember your reality is only your perception. And that's kind of a both soothing and horrifying concept that our brain makes up 90% of what's around us. So if you can imagine it, it's somewhat real.
Yeah. I love that. Well, and like, you know, I mean, pagans exercise their creativity all the time, right? If we're doing like astral projection or like those other types of like spirit traveling where you go somewhere and maybe you build something in the spirit realm, like
Yes.
what's the difference between that and getting really detailed on your persona color scheme and
Right.
background? Like it's all this like creative mind space that's like,
Yeah.
you know, energetic and not seen through the eye but through the mind. And
Yeah.
like
Especially journey work, being able to go on meditative journeys. You have to first be able to imagine the setting you're trying to be in. There's so much, I feel like the word imagination has somehow gotten stigmatized as something bad or lesser, when it's like, no, that's like the first step to manifestation is imagination. You have to be able to imagine it. And we can dress it up and be like, no, envision. But that's still imagining. It's fine. It's okay to imagine. It's good.
Yeah, totally. Megs, well, guess I'm a gender now.
Oops, took your gender.
Some flavor of those other trans identities. You're just trying them all on. They're different outfits, you know. It's fine. Create your own world along with choose your own adventure. Yeah. I love that. One of my favorite sort of hobby activities that can happen at witch camp is people will get together and play tabletop role-playing games like in their Slack time. Can you imagine being at camp with a bunch of witches and like your meals are all taken care of for you and you just get to sit around and play tabletop games after ritual with your friends?
That sounds the best.
It's the
The
best.
crossover between gamers, cosplayers, furries, kinksters, and pagans. It's just one.
Yeah. It's one. The Venn diagram is a circle. All right.
I love it.
We are a fun peoples. I will say that.
I like that.
You know, I mean, I know disability isn't like necessarily one of the topics we decided ahead of time, but I feel like there's a piece here too, because I'm an intersectional, mischievous being and I will always bring the things in. You know, for me, so much creativity is needed with my disability.
Yeah.
Like, how do you like have sex or be intimate while disabled?
Yeah.
How do you like socialize while disabled? Like, you can't leave your house. So what do you do? Like, you could just be alone or you could get creative and figure it out. And so, you know, there's so much like not only creativity for survival, but like creativity that's needed for thriving and fun.
Yes.
When you don't fit the cookie cutter, cishet, able-bodied, white, like upper middle class, like flavor.
Yep. Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking when you said that. Even just economically, sometimes, like a reason I got into web forums and communities that way when I was an older teenager is because my family did not have the money to, I'm going to go to a concert. I'm going to go out of town and no, I'm going to sit here at this computer for free and meet people. Like, because that was what, that's what I had. And at that time, the internet was a very different beast. You still plugged your phone into the computer to get online, and so
Yeah,
it wasn't.
You
Yeah,
got
it wasn't like now
you
where it's
couldn't
like
be on the internet and make a phone call. You had to
nope.
choose.
Yep. And if grandma needed to get something done on the phone, sorry, bye internet. Like that was just it. But wanting to connect, like needing to reach outside of the communities that I was kind of forced into just by location. Trying to find people who vibed like me. Like, yeah, that required, I couldn't just, well, let's not even talk about being in a huge family with one car. I couldn't just jump in the car and drive off someplace.
Right.
And
It was a family resource.
yes. Yeah.
You could get on your bike if you had one, or walk.
Got stolen.
Mine did too.
That life.
Hate the stolen bike feelings.
But yeah, no, I hear you so much too with chronic illness, even in just this current context of, you know, all of the panini going on in the world and like trying to find spaces that are safe for my disabilities and my chronic illnesses. It's really hard because I see so much and I kind of get FOMO really deeply, like because it's like I want to go to the thing, but no one's going to be masked. And for me, there's still a lot of danger in that.
Same.
Like,
Big
so,
same.
Like I can't.
My friends did ritual this weekend, and I was like, one, I'm exhausted because I just did this mutual aid event on Thursday, so I don't have it in my physical body to drive an hour to come to your backyard. But two, it's like they're not masking at the event, and I said, you know, if I'm there, like I'm going to be masking, even though we're outside, and I would like to ask that for those of you who are comfortable doing so to also do so. And when I Zoomed them, none of them were wearing masks, which maybe it's because I wasn't there, but it's just like, yeah, it's one thing to have able-bodied friends who like say they're allies, and like they were willing to make the accommodation of like setting up a Zoom call so I could at least talk to them and see them a little bit. But it's another thing to have like fellow, like circling with fellow disabled pagan queer people, especially if they're also trans, is like so special and magical. Like it's hard to get us together because we're all disabled and tired, but like when it does happen, it's like some of my favorite, most like potent, magical like times is when we've been able to get those multiple intersections together to do magic. It's like, you're
making me realize I need to start something. I need to start something, don't I?
Maybe we'll start something together on the internet so our friends can come.
And that's I've been thinking of doing full moon gatherings online, and I admit, y'all, I am not shy at all about doing trans only things because we need that space. We do. We need space and not trying to even be like, oh, we're so special, we're so different. It's like, no, we deserve space too, where we're trans and that's not the topic. Like it can be the topic, but it doesn't have to be the topic because I'm still amazed at going into, I will say in general for me, pagan spaces have been very, very open. Very seldom have I had things that felt like anti-transness, or if anything, I've run into some turfiness in some feminist pagan coven spaces. But outside of that, I actually haven't had a lot. It's you described a specific type of pagan white guy with you left out the kilts. He's wearing a kilt too. Yeah, you know, like
the manly kilts.
Their manly kilt probably used to be a firefighter or something. And like I've actually had amazing experiences with that person. Several different areas of my life, but it does come up. Oh, let's talk about the trans thing. And it's interesting because I think they're trying to be affirming in that way, but it's like right now I'm here to be pagan. I'm trans and pagan
I'm not
Black.
Here to do this emotional labor right now.
Right.
I'm on vacation. I'm not on this. You're not paying me to teach you right now.
Thank you. Like, I'm here to jump the bellfire with everybody else. Like, and probably not make it. So like can you help?
Please help me put my kilt out. It's on fire.
Right. Catch me, please. my polyester fairy wings that I wore to the ritual to upset all the purists. But
oh my gosh. I love it so much. Oh, so good. Maybe after the show we can talk more about this full moon idea. I have thoughts, DiAn.
Yeah.
I forgot what we were talking about. I'm just excited about everything that's happening right now.
I know.
What does animism mean to you?
So I gave animism in general earlier. Animism, my specific animism is honoring, yes, the spirits and everything in our earth, but a really important part for me is healing the relationships that we have with those spirits of earth. So, for instance, my people were displaced onto this land and now live in many different unceded territories of the indigenous peoples of that place. So, first, what are the ways that we can support those indigenous communities whose land we were displaced onto and continue to live on to this day? But also, how can we heal? So, for instance, one of my healing works right now is with the ocean. Um, and being taught for years and years and years about the terrible things that happen to my people on the ocean, on boats, in all these different ways. And so, how do I heal that? How do I go put my foot in a wave and not feel that twinge of fear of, hey, do you remember what happened? It's like, no, I don't. I don't. It's like, well, your genetics do. It's like, okay, I know they do, but I can heal this. That this doesn't have to be a fearful place. This is a part of nature, just like me. So those healing things with the air, with the water, with the rain, and with my own body, because there are people who see, part of our humanity is us like, what's the word? Not challenging nature, but overcoming. That's the word people use. Overcome your nature. No, lean into it. My other challenge has been, I'm an animal. I'm happy being an animal. I'm fine with it. I stopped eating with silverware unless I'm out someplace. Like,
Nice.
I love touching my food. Y'all, like, if you just try it, okay? Like, try my animist practice of eating with your hands. The food tastes different when you put it on your hands and then put your hand in your mouth like a baby and like get that food off your fingers. It's such a experience. So animism for me is honoring the earth and the spirits in the earth through those healing interactions, to just kind of find that oneness with nature. How do we go back? How do I go back to being a natural thing versus what the other options are?
Right, a colonized thing.
Yeah.
Colonized by humans, colonized by whiteness, colonized by capitalism.
Sorry, my cat is helping. Come
here. Yay.
There
Earlier, Beatrix helped me pick out the necklace I'm wearing because she decided, ooh, shiny thing, I'm going to knock this off of your altar. So that's why I'm wearing my amethyst tree necklace situation today. No better to eat curry than with your hands, says Kamesy. Nice.
Yes.
Kamesy's my Indian South African friend that I was telling you about before the show.
Oh, I love it. I've had curry with on top of rice, eating with my hands. Like for a second, I was like, oh, I'm gonna need something, and like, no, the rice held it. It was amazing.
Nice.
I love it.
I love that. That's so great. Now you're realizing you trained yourself out of eating with your hands. Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing with that too is like if you're eating with your hands, you're probably more present with your meal, right? Because it's
You
like
can't do anything
you can't
else.
multitask. You gotta like pay attention to what you're doing.
Yeah. And Kamesy, I agree. I grew up eating with my hands. My family commonly, like most people in the African diaspora, eat. Like you take a piece of bread, or we have something we call poke cake, and it's like, I don't really know how to describe it other than poke cake. It's not a pancake, it's not cornbread, it's somewhere between, and it's really soft and fluffy. And yeah, you just scrape the food up with it and like eat it with it. And I learned at school. It wasn't until high school I went to a school that was mixed instead of mostly my people. And yes, y'all, Georgia is technically still pretty segregated. The areas I grew up in. And so I didn't go to a school with non-Black people until I was in high school pretty much, and was made fun of for eating with my hands. And so I unlearned. And part of my healing work has been, no, that was fine. It's great that I eat with my hands. Yes.
Yeah, Mirami says in the chat, sounds kind of like injera to me too. And Bear was saying, I can't eat with my hands because I can't stand dirty hands, to which I responded, accessibility matters too. There's a diversity of options.
Mm-hmm.
You eat at your desk now, so cutlery is needed. Yeah, but what if you didn't though? At least when the power's out and you can't do anything at your desk anyways, what if you ate with your hands? That could be your power out practice.
Yes.
You wash your hands, you think of Vagata while you're doing it, and then you eat with your hands. It's a different way to be grateful for the energy that went into growing the plants and feeding the animals and,
Yes.
creating the food. I love gratitude practice around meals.
Yes. Oh, that's
It's
beautiful.
lovely.
And that's exactly what I mean by what I see as animism is that
Mm-hmm.
that like moment of truly communing, because you start to think about all of it. Who grew this food? Like,
Yeah.
look at this and what that food's going to do in your body. As well as being pagan, I'm a like mega nerd as far as like biological sciences and stuff. And I actually just like to sit there sometimes and imagine chewing the food and it being broken all the way down to molecules, and those molecules mixing with my little saliva molecule carriers and going down the esophagus. I like to just picture the whole thing in amazing detail, because it's amazing, y'all. Like, that's kind of freaking magical that we're just like these mega processor plants, just so that we can then fertilize the earth. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Okay, speaking of fertilizing the earth, I didn't imagine I'd be asking this question when I woke up this morning. So if you're eating with your hands, what happens when the food leaves your body? Do you still use a toilet like default mode, or are you fertilizing the earth?
So if I am outside, I'm probably fertilizing the earth, like camping and
There you
stuff. I
go.
cannot
Yeah.
stand those public shared spaces at most campgrounds, with exception to Malibu State Park. That was interesting. It's like
All
too
right.
clean. It was like, this isn't what's happening. But anyway, but I've been doing a lot of mobility work around changing body positions while going potty. Squatty potty
Nice.
is not a gimmick. It is not a
No, I
gimmick.
love squatty potties.
Yeah, and so just
It's
even
revolutionary.
yeah, somebody in the chat mentioned about accessibility and ability, and part of eating with my hands actually had to do with, for me, an accessibility choice, because I have really intense carpal tunnel and ulnar nerve symptoms, so it's really painful to do that motion that you hold with. So even if I'm not scooping the food with my hands, sometimes I will just pick the whole bowl up and like use it like a giant cup and just like kind of cup
drink
food.
it.
But it's the same with going potty. Like, I never realized a lot of the issues that present in my body as IBS had to do with the fact that we're kind of taught these very unnatural positions to do things in. And it's not just going potty.
Yeah.
We're like limited on how we're allowed to sleep. We're limited on how we are able to birth for people who can birth. Like, there are all these natural things the body wants to do, and we're taught like, no, you have to sleep on a bed this way with your head. Like, and it's like, nah, go ahead, lean. A lot of humans actually like to be halfway sat up while they're sleeping. That's why people love recliners. We actually really like to be in that position. Like, yeah, it's really interesting. Even down to something like that is, I'm trying to relearn my animal practices, including following this cat sometimes and seeing like, my cat always eats and then goes to sleep for just a short bit. What if I did that? What would that feel like? Like, learning from nature around me as well.
I would call those rewilding practices.
Ooh, I like it.
That's not my phrase. That's I can't remember the name of the person, but I can see their face in my head.
I'm gonna have to look that up. I love that.
I think person's name is Coyote, but that's clearly a camp name. So I'm gonna have to figure out who that is and get back to you. But fabulous, Black, gender wonderful being who lives in California.
Amazing.
Yeah. I feel like this one is sort of almost a biography question, and we may have already covered it, but I'm gonna ask it anyways, and you can skip it if you want to. What spiritual communities have you been in, whether a traditional church, a pagan community, or something else altogether?
I've been around the block. So I started again in a Pentecostal megachurch, which is an experience, y'all. Like, I'm not the only one. I suggest it with caution, but if you are curious about Pentecostal megachurches and the things that go on, all you need to do is hop on YouTube and look up problems with the Pentecostal megachurch, or you can just search it and find like written articles. There are so many people speaking up about it because it was I think it really took off in like the 70s and 80s. They pretty much become your entire community so that they can control all your actions. And it's not just the Pentecostal megachurch, there's other congregations. But I then went on like I don't even know what you would call it. Like, I was like, okay, so but which religion feels right? So I tried a bunch of stuff. Baha'i, I looked at Jewish congregations, Reformed Jewish congregations. I tiptoed around the Universalist Unitarian congregations and finally found a coven that I loved. And after the coven, I did solitary practicing within a group called North Georgia Solitaries. And what it was is it was a bunch of solitary pagan practitioners who then would come together just because it's lonely out there when you're just, not doing anything. When you're not connecting with people in your spiritual practice. So that didn't exactly work out either, because it turns out, when you're all doing something vastly different, sometimes it can be hard. GenderMeowster, you shared about calling in all of the energies and the deities and the elemental forces, and it's like, so sometimes our circles would get so muddled because we were trying to make sure everybody felt represented that it just wouldn't function anymore. But I met a lot of people through that, and that's part of how I ended up discovering these animist pagan practices and what solitary work could look like in a way that isn't lonely, because that was also a false binary. There isn't together or separate. It doesn't have to be that. There is lots of range in the middle. There's lots of range outside of that. So, I've been in a lot. Coventry was very interesting. It was an old-fashioned coven where you had to meet the people outside of circle and kind of get vetted in before you could come into the outer circle and then work your way into the inner circle. They were a pretty well-to-do family, and they had a huge circle out in the middle of the North Georgia woods. Y'all, this was like storybook pagan, stone circle where they hold a knife to you when you come in and ask, how come ye, all of this. It was amazing. I absolutely, actually, I would go back and redo that part of my life. It was an interesting experiment. I would go back and revisit. But it just wasn't for me in the end. A little different from where I was headed.
Yeah. To circle back to our last topic, Cody's street name, like a person name, whatever, is Preston Vargas. And Mirami and I are typing at each other. Mundane name, I like that better. Mundane name is Preston Vargas, and I think probably Preston and Theo, who's another reclaiming witch, work together, possibly on something about rewilding. There's a book called Elements of Magic that's edited by Jane Meredith and Gidi Parma. I think at least one of those people lives in Australia, but I'm not sure. And it's possible that Preston has something in that collection. So we'll make sure to link that book in the show notes for folks. But yeah, Elements of Magic is also the name of the very beginner first course that's offered in reclaiming. There's 5 core courses now, and Elements of Magic is one of them. And you can take it 10 times with 10 different teachers and get completely different content, because it's not the only thing that, at least within reclaiming, that we all agree on are the principles of unity. Everything else is people are teaching from their own experience. There's always 2 teachers, because you want to be anarchist and not have any one person be the authority. So there's always 2 in classes. I mean, there could be more than 2, but there's at least always 2. And it's really cool to sort of hear the different, I just found a link for the book, hear the different perspectives on sort of the meanings behind earth, air, fire, water, and spirit.
Yes.
Just pop that book in there for us. I think it's in there, but anyways, I think I actually already own that book. It's on my bookshelf. I haven't read it clearly. ADHD wins that round, usually, the reading of the books with the eyeballs. Yeah, it might be time to read it. It'd be nice to do a voice call and read it to each other. I like that. It would hold my attention better. I appreciate you talking about your sort of trajectory, your journey, the places you've been in. I like your description of the storybook pagan circle with the actual stone stuff. I can't tell you how many times I've been around witches who wish that they could communally buy land so they could have their sacred rites in the same place consistently over time, because there's something really special about a place that has the magic of years soaked into the earth, the stones, the trees,
Yes.
you know. And something that I've noticed I'm grieving, at least, is witch camp is moving locations, because the place that we've been doing it the last several years during the pandemic lockdowns, like, we didn't have camp for obvious reasons. And for health reasons, we chose not to do it again last year. And they found someone else who was more willing to take those risks and take that time slot. And they have a new contract that takes that week that we're used to being there.
Yeah.
And so, like, we've had to find a new location, and the weavers have, been working really hard on sorting all that out. And yeah, so it's been like I feel the heart ache about, oh, we're in a new place. And it's happened once before. This camp is 30 or more years old. Like, these people have been meeting every summer for the last 30 plus years.
Wow.
It's one of the older of the Reclaiming Witch camps. And yeah, this will be the third place we've had to choose. And I remember hearing some of the old timers talk about how they miss the old place when we were at the second place. And now I'm becoming one of those people. Yeah, there is some grieving for you not meeting those specific stones again. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a
But
campground where the solitaries met, and they had met there for years. And there were these trees that had grown. I don't know if I would call it trees or one tree, because it looked like it had the same base, but there were 3 separate trunks that came out of it. And they called them the 3 sisters, and like had left offerings at those trees years and years. And the park system decided to cut them down.
Oh my
And so
God.
one year they went to that campground.
Traumatizing.
Yeah. And those trees were gone. And the park system, unfortunately, like, the way they cut them down even was like the stumps were left. It was rugged and ragged. The inside was still all red. And it was just like, oh my gosh. Like, yeah, that's whew. And then that ties into all sorts of things around old money, especially in Georgia, whiteness. And these people were, a few generations into where they were. And so having a space like that is it's rare. It's a rarity. And
it's also a privilege.
Yes, a rarity and a privilege, 100%.
And trans disabled people of color, like witches, are not often synonymous with privilege.
Yeah. I told someone once I'm a polymer clay witch.
Nice.
And they laughed because they totally got it. It's like, sometimes I got to DIY stuff. Like, I am not necessarily built to go on long mountain passage hikes to find an elm branch that has been offered to me by, so no, I can just make one at home out of something. It'll be fine. It works.
Yeah. There is, it is special when we're able to connect with the earth, right? Connect with specific plants and specific places. And I agree that it's totally jarring when the powers that be come along and wrest those away from us in one way or another.
Yeah.
But it also, like, just sort of speaks to and shows just how special and strong and true those connections can be.
Yes.
Right. What I think is maybe a way to do a rite of passage or a ritual to sort of bring the soul of a place from one location to another could be working with mycelium.
Yeah.
Because mycelium is it's the plant internet. Like, it connects all of the underground living beings. And if I trusted anything to carry the spirit of a place from one spot to another, it would be mycelium.
100%. Those hyphal mats are unbeatable. It's amazing.
Yeah. Not a plant. Yeah, you're right. Mycelium is its own fungi category. It is not animal or plant. It's this other third thing. You're right. Mirror me as our mushroom head around here.
Yes. I find mushrooms and the way we are learning more about them very interesting too, because again, all of our ancient earth honoring people told us all of this.
Yeah.
They told us all of this. Like the Western white science decided like, no, that's made up. There aren't egregores. That makes no sense. What do you mean so many plants communicating with each other that they are a sentient living? Like, Every once in a while, I want to be like, told you to like just make my own science journal, like with its own like IRB and everything, just to make papers that say told you. But like, it's always funny to me when there's a scientific discovery, like, "Oh, these mushrooms can communicate over vast networks." You could have just listened when you were told that by every ancient earth honoring tradition, but whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. How can pagan communities and other spiritual groups be more welcoming and uplifting for gender diverse folks, disabled folks, people of color, like people who are not wealthy? Any other intersection you want to bring in?
Ooh, so not only is that like an amazing question, it's a huge question, right?
It
So
is huge. That's
surmising,
$150 an hour answer.
listen, surmising it all, I think I would say include us in the making of those spaces, not make the space and then go, okay, how we now let's do a focus group. But no, if you have a board, so if you are putting together, as I'm putting together, for instance, some of my first, what'll be my first, I'm calling them sermons because I actually really like that word. But they're probably going to be Instagram lives, but whatever, like as I'm putting that together, I am talking
Instagram Live
to
is just the publishing platform. It can still be a sermon.
right. It's a sermon on Instagram Live. And yeah, so I'm talking to my friends that sit at other intersections than I do. I'm talking to them now as I'm building it, including their feedback and making sure that there are places where they can shine as well, especially my Indigenous friends, making sure that they're hearing my thoughts and making sure they feel comfortable to say, yo, that's just appropriation right there. You didn't come up with that. That's not something, give proper credit. So I think that including us, listening to us, and then being open to change, even in spaces where I heard people say, oh, I hear you. Okay, so you're having a lot of visual problems, and so you can't see your way down there. Okay, I hear you. We'll think about that. Don't think about it. Take my feedback. It's like I literally told you what I need to be helped. So don't say you're thinking about it. You can just say, yes, we will do that, or no, we are not going to do that. And either is fine, right? Or we have plans to do it. Here's our stepwise plan. We can't do everything you asked right now, but here's what we can do.
Yeah.
But a lot of places don't do that. They simply kind of go, oh, I'm so sorry. I hear you. And that's it. And it's not enough. It's like,
yeah, it's like you don't understand me though.
Yeah, right. So it takes all of it. It takes listening, letting us help build these spaces, build these spiritual practices and spaces, especially when it comes to taking the way that our American culture is steeped in white nationalism. Like people of color have to be there in the planning stages from square one, because whether we like it or not, we are all raised under white nationalism.
That's right.
And for some of us in the United States.
Yeah.
And for some of us, that becomes a fight within self. Like, obviously, I'm not white. So being raised with white nationalist views, which I still was because I was raised here in America, becomes like a fight against self. Like, wait, no, I don't think I'm ugly. I don't think this practice is weird. So, and then for other people, it becomes really easy to just fold into it. Like, oh,
yeah,
this is what my mom did and her mom did and my dad and all this, and it just fold into it. So it takes more than listening to fix it. It takes an action, like action steps. And that's been one that I'm really fortunate to learn about from a lot of my Indigenous friends here, is how to improve, for instance, land acknowledgements and such with action behind them. So here's the land I'm on, and here's some artists that you can support who are from this land, like really learning to take the actions behind the steps. And it's been so nice to be educated in that way. But that takes a lot of like vulnerability on the part of those Indigenous people, because they've said this all before, right? And been ignored. And so it takes a lot for them. And so therefore I need to make space for that. I need to learn to hold my emotional reactions to being corrected. And that's one way that we have to build, I don't know, make the communities open to everyone else, everyone who isn't white and able-bodied and neurotypical. Like there are so many intersections that need to be honored. And do it with more than one person. Because I know more than once I've been roped into a space as like this checkbox of minorities or something. Like, like they had a checkbox and they're like,
person.
Right. And it's like, oh, wait, let's see. DiAn checks our box for neurodivergent, Black. Okay, so we only got to find, we only got to find, a person who uses a wheelchair and now we're good. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. Do a focus group.
Yeah.
Pay the people some kind of way, services or money or something. It's not hard. Like, it's not hard to take the baby steps of doing better as far as not even accessibility. I want to say involvement. Like, I think sometimes when we think of it as how do we become more accessible, it's like, oh, well, have better involvement from those communities that you're trying to include. Like, we don't want to be accessible. We want to be inclusive. Like, they overlap. They're not mutually exclusive, of course, right? But when we start thinking of how to include people, instead of how to make it bearable for them to be in the space you've already created, it changes the way of doing it.
I had like 3 different thoughts while you were talking, and now I have 0 thoughts. Now that it's my turn to say first.
No thoughts.
No thoughts.
No thoughts, no gender. It's all gone.
No thoughts, no gender. All thoughts and genders have been canceled for the day.
Ooh.
We do have a little question from the chat. I wonder, from Mirami, I wonder if DiAn has read Braiding Sweetgrass, because, oh my God, such a good piece of writing on bridging the gap between Western science and Indigenous knowledge.
I have not read that, but I'm writing it down because I don't know if you know this, but braiding sweetgrass and pine is a Gullah Geechee custom. Like, if you were to ever go to Charleston, South Carolina, for instance, Beaufort, like South Carolina, Georgia, Savannah, you see us out there with like the corn husk and the sweetgrass braids, making baskets or those little roses and crosses and all sorts of stuff that you can get out there. So even just the title makes me want to read it. So thanks for sharing that. I'm going to have to look that up.
I've just put the link in the chat and I'll throw it in the show notes as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
So we've got Braiding Sweetgrass. We've got Elements of Magic. We've got the Principles of Unity. That's what happens when a bunch of pagans hang out and talk about spirituality. You get a bunch of links.
Wall. Yeah, this is amazing.
Does your hat have rainbow thread in it?
It does.
You just leaned close to the camera and I saw it.
Look at that.
That's a good hat.
It's there. Target.
Oh my God.
Target's fun. Pride collections, and then they named the designers. I gotta admit, they're, as far as a mega corporation, they're doing some interesting stuff. Like, I love their Black History Month collection this year. They named all the creators, and these aren't like already rich people. They pull people in. It's really outstanding.
Yeah. Hashtag book pod.
Yes. Robin Wall. That's who I was looking for.
Oh,
wonderful.
Man. All of this is so wonderful. Okay. Well, chat, if you have any more questions, this is your last call for AMA questions. In the meantime, DiAn, is there anything we missed about paganism and spirituality that you'd like to make sure that you say? It's one of our concluding questions.
In case I didn't say it, I think people were flowing with this anyway, but I don't know if I said the words. I've learned just through years of experience, you are on the right path when it feels good. And that sounds a little like, I don't know, it sounds like an easy way to kind of box yourself into an experience. But when I started to align with my spiritual path, things about my gender started to make sense. Things about my like way of loving as a polyamorous queer person started to make sense. Things about my mental and psychological challenges started to make sense. Like, and not that everything fell in line perfectly, but spirituality was no longer the fight. I started to see the fight as not with myself or with, oh no, these spirits are against me. Like, it started to become, okay, here's my spiritual practice and here's how the world is holding me. Here are the ways the whole world is holding me so that I can then fight the system that is hurting me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when you're aligned. Whatever you end up finding the name of your practice being, I know there are people who are feeling so claimed in validated within systemic religions. So that's totally possible. It isn't the path for me, but whatever it is that you do find, especially as a pagan, because there are lots of ways to be pagan, there are lots of ways to be animist, it should feel good. If you feel like you are fighting, or if you're in a system where they're constantly telling you you're under spiritual attack, then question that a little bit, because you don't have to live a life where you're being harmed, both by the system here in the US that is actually out to get you and the spiritual world. The rocks aren't there to hurt you. Sometimes we trip over them, but they are not there to hurt you. Like, your spirits should be a support network, not a new base of enemies. And I do think sometimes I see people leaning into spiritualities where they're being given more and more enemies, more and more things that are hurting them, without being offered any support, or the support is the leader of that spirituality, and now you're in a dangerous territory, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it should feel good. Whatever your practice is, it should bring you pleasure. It should bring you joy.
I love that. Your practice should bring you pleasure and joy.
Mm-hmm.
That is so delightfully anti-Protestant.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it.
I love that. Can you share an experience with gender euphoria?
Oh, yes.
I love asking my guests this question. It's a good one.
I'm really fortunate that in my more recent life, I've had several amazing experiences, and I'm trying to think, I'm going to use a more recent one. So I had the amazing honor of my work paying for a trip to a conference in Dallas called BTAC, the Black Trans Advocacy Conference,
Nice.
which was all Black trans people.
Mm-hmm.
Something I have never experienced. I've been at a conference before of all trans people, but all Black trans people, in all of the different ways that we look, all of the different ways that we behave, because there, of course, are expectations around what Black masculinities and femininities look like. And even finding more Black non-binary and genderqueer folk was just sitting. There was a point where there was a pageant first, and the person who won Mix Black Trans International, I think they use the word genderqueer. I think it's the word they use. Person who was doing a dance performance to a song called "This Is Me" by now what is her name? Kayela. She's an amazing gospel singer. It was from a musical called The Greatest Showman. Kayela Settle. There it is. It's a beautiful song just on its own and within the musical. But as a young person, I didn't mention this, I had an obsession with circuses and quote freak shows in the circus, because I felt like that was right where I belonged. I've always grown facial hair. I like since puberty, I just lots of things about my body. I was like, wow, I would have fit in perfect there. That's a place where I could be. And so first, I actually was really touched by that part of the movie itself, y'all. It's a whole experience. It's not the best experience, but that specific scene where it's the people who are in the freak show saying, like, we're humans too. Like, give us our time to shine. We do all the work and you take all the credit. And to see this like genderqueer person out on a huge dance floor, just taking up space in this shimmering holographic dress, like, but with a face like mine, with the beard, with the short hair, and it was just one of those moments where I had never felt so absolutely seen and validated. Like, it was like this mixture of euphoria and compersion all at once. That was just like, this is it. Like, I'm not just making up some random thing and sitting on the sidelines hoping like, tag me in, coach, I'm trans too. Like, it's like, here it is. Here we are doing the thing. And I'm not invisible, and I'm not doing something rare and exclusive. I'm not a shiny Pokemon. There are more of me. Like, and that felt really good to me, because again, another thing that happens in nature is the echo. You don't ever see one pine tree, the thousands of them. And every once in a while, I get a little lonely as I'll see somebody on Instagram and it's like, oh, non-binary, this, and I click it. And it's a very specific look and a very specific type of person. And I click and I click and I click. And I don't find people who are like me often. So in that moment, there was this amazing, like, Yeah. Yeah, I'm still in that natural order. I'm still part of this like world that can be viewed, just this amazing sense of settling into my body fully with no shame, no need to prove anything. It was just absolutely amazing. So such a euphoric experience, just sharing space with that person in the way that they did their pride, like TM pride.
Yeah, that is so amazing. I love that so much. Um, yeah, I I will very briefly mention it now, but I really think you should meet my co-host Atlas sometime. Atlas wears a fabulous Phoenix outfit and goes to pride marches and hands out roses, like hundreds or thousands of roses. Um, yeah, they're such a wonderful being. I think you two would
Amazing.
enjoy each other. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, anyway, so my last question that I have for you today, Dion, is what would you like to make sure folks know about your perspective on gender and non-binary or trans issues?
I think the thing I would love for everyone to take away about gender and trans issues is that they are tied into every element of our being. I hear
Mm,
people very often say, oh, well, you can't make blank into a personality. You can't make being non binary into. What do you think personality is other than a bunch of things that, like, excuse me, explain yourself? But
mm,
yes, you can. It's a part of your personality, it's a part of your being. And when we ask for space or for space to be held, then the other thing that I get sometimes is like, well, what's that got to do with gender? What's religion got to do with gender? What's being an artist got to do? Well, they all mix. The thing about intersections is it's not black and trans and pagan and no, it's black, trans, pagan. Like it's no
yes,
commas
and yes,
actually. I
and
use
yes,
the
and.
commas in English just because that's the limitations of the language. But technically, it's more like German where you just keep adding on to the word until you make a
Mm-hmm,
completely new word. It's more like
mm-hmm,
that. It's
yeah.
all of those intersections come together to be something completely different. And so, yeah, yeah, we bring up being trans. Like, I don't think that's an issue within this like this discussion here, looking at this amazing chat and talking to y'all. Like, I don't think this is necessarily a thing here, but spread the word. Like, we are bounteous creations. There are so many intersections within us that, yes, we're trans or queer or non binary, but we are also so much more, so many
Mm-hmm,
other things mixed into that. So, whereas it's great to be able to connect with people because you saw the same pride flag that you like, that doesn't mean you're going to be best friends because there's all these other intersections that are going to occur. That doesn't mean that we're not going to accidentally hurt each other sometimes because sometimes microaggressions happen and it's all about learning how to listen when that's occurred and make space to fix the issue. We always have so much more to learn. So I don't know, make space to expect the bigness of what it is to be trans because it isn't just that. It's uh, a big mix of a lot of things.
yeah. Oh man, I love it so much. I could seriously just sit here and chat with you endlessly. This is like not only a wonderful conversation, but I feel like we're sort of birds of a feather with our various backgrounds and wanderings. Like we're different birds, right? We still have had different
Right.
lives, but there's a lot of ways that we're similar. And the feeling you shared about experiencing like while you were at the conference, there's like a little mini version of it happening here with both of us hanging out and like
Yes.
vibing together. It makes me really grinny. Um, all right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. You all, yeah, Kamesy says this conversation feels a lot like a showcase of healing.
Mm.
Aw, I like that description. I love that. So, y'all, Dion is a proud Black queer witch with a big mouth and a bigger heart that is really hard to break despite the cracks and deep fissures. He fights with his mental health that he is wrecked in academia and makes art, stories, educational materials about aspects of his intersectional identities. You can find more at DiAnDvIAtioN.com, DiAnDvIAtION.com. That is also your handle on both Twitter and Instagram. And chat, I'm going to have DiAn read this week's Clatter Query that you, our audience, can answer on social media platforms.
Yes, this week, can y'all answer what is a way that your spiritual practice takes care of you and your community?
What a great question. So folks, you have an opportunity to answer that on our social media channels. It'll be posted shortly after the live recording. And by the time you're hearing this on the recorded version, we'll have it up for a few days. So pop by our Instagram, our Twitter, whatever, and engage with that question. Next week's guest is Larissa Frost, and we will be discussing plurality and creativity. For community updates, I wanted to remind you all that Keamsey Mutual Aid is coming up. The donate link is live now. So if you hear this and you're like, I'm going to forget later, you can go throw money in the hole now. Hashtag Keamsey Mutual Aid begins on Africa Day, which is May 25th. So that's 2 Thursdays or 1 Thursday. It's in 10 days from the live recording. Yeah. If you'd like to help organize, produce, or stream for the event, we still need more streamers. We still need more moderators. So let us know. Reach out to me, Sunbury or Keamsey, and save the dates and stop by the raid train. The donate link is pally.gg/tip/Keamsey. Keamsey needs help getting an off-grid electricity solution to provide flexibility, freedom, and options. Because when you're disabled and at home all the time, the last thing you need is your power to be out. The event will be going for 3 days, and it's very intentional because the longest outage Keamsey has ever experienced is 72 hours. Think for a minute about living in our modern world and not having access to power for 3 full days, and how challenging it would be to do your work, to socialize with your friends as a disabled person who's sort of, you need to stay close to home and you can't get online. You can't turn your computer on. Your refrigerator doesn't keep your food cold consistently. Like you can't run your CPAP machine at night to keep your brain and your body well. So we're doing something about it. Allyship is an action. It's not an identity. And so we're doing something about it. Please show up, even if you don't have money. Your viewership helps. Your typing in the chat gives energy to the streamers who are doing the content. If you're not available the day of, we need help ahead of time organizing, creating the schedule, creating graphics, even just being creative and thinking of incentives for the streamers to have. There's a ton of ways you can support and help and participate. So Keamsey Mutual Aid, hashtag, look for that hashtag on your social media channels. You can like, retweet, boost, comment, whatever. Any of those posts that you see, that's another way to help out. In the meantime, I will report that the Lexington Mutual Aid event last Thursday went incredibly well. The original goal was $690 for Lexington's name change and top surgery. We smashed that goal and raised enough money for his hysterectomy also. 2 surgeries in 1 stream. Can you imagine? Enough money for 2 surgeries. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, DiAn, for being my guest today.
Genderful would like to thank our guest for being on this podcast. If you'd like to catch us live, join us on Mondays at twitch.tv/GenderMeowster. Show notes will appear in the edited version of the show on Fridays on both YouTube and podcasting platforms.
If you have a question you would like the host to answer or are gender diverse and would like to request an interview, please send an email to genderfulpodcast@gmail.com or sign up via the website at genderfulpodcast.com.
As a gender diverse community, the Clatter wants to assure our listeners that we are prepared to moderate our spaces. We will get positive and negative feedback on these shows and topics, and we have a moderation team on our channels, socials, and Discord server ready to deal with this.
Please join our Discord server at discord.gg/Meowster to meet the community and get a regular digest of solidarity resources. You can also support us with subscriptions on Patreon, following and reviewing us on your favorite podcasting platform, or engaging with our posts and content on social media at GenderfulPod and at GenderMeowster.
You could take a few moments to also rate the show. We will post any 5-star reviews on our socials, so get creative. Mention a special interest of your own, a project you're working on, or even say hi to your comfort person in your review. What power?
This show is made possible by volunteers, tips, and subscriptions. Shout out to the folks helping us coordinate guests, edit the podcast, moderate the live chat, and post on our socials.
Artist credit for Genderful. Genderful's theme song is called Hope by Free Range Megs, aka Soma. The GenderMeowster logo was designed by That's Barnaby and edited with consent by Transgriffin. Genderful's pre-show is wrangled by JuiceTex. Genderful is edited and mixed by Transgriffin and Alexis Vandam. Genderful's social media is managed by Queer to Help. Genderful is hosted by Atlas O Phoenix and GenderMeowster. Genderful is the intellectual property of GenderMeowster. All rights reserved.
Trans rights are human rights. That's right.